Welcome to the latest game theory lesson. This is part of a series dropping videos teaching game theory all throughout the semester, so like and subscribe to receive updates. Today we're talking about a really fascinating topic and one of the most real-world applications you could see for game theory, and that's the idea of mechanism design. So most of the time, if you're a student in an economics course, when you think about game theory, you think about the professor handing you a problem. And you are handed a problem. You solve the problem. You find what the equilibrium is. Mechanism design flips this on its head. And it makes it a little messier, it makes it a little trickier, but it makes it absolutely relevant to almost every facet of life. Instead of you being handed a game you solve, what's the equilibrium, you have an outcome in mind that you think is desirable, and you have to set up the rules of the game to get to that particular outcome. To start, we're going to watch a short clip from Seinfeld.
All right, Fatso, out of the car.
I'm gonna capture this.
Come on! Give me your wallet. Don't you?
Well, there goes the money for the lipo.
See, the great thing about robbing a fat guy is it's an easy getaway, you know? They can't really chase you.
It's actually doing him a favor. It's less money for him to buy food.
Want your wallet? Come on! Come on, come on!
That's a shame. All right, I'm gonna call NBC.
Officer! He's stealing my car! Officer, I was carjacked. I was held up at gunpoint. He took my wallet, everything.
Okay, thanks anyway. They can't get another plane.
All right, what's wrong with the plane we got? They're just checking it out.
Oh, forget that.
No, not getting on there. Come on, let's get something to eat here in Sticksville.
All right. Hold it right there.
What?
You're under arrest.
Under arrest? What for?
Article 223-7 of the Latham County Penal Code.
What? No, we didn't do anything.
That's exactly right. The law requires you to help or assist anyone in danger as long as it's reasonable to do so.
I never heard of that.
It's new. It's called the Good Samaritan Law. Let's go.
Good Samaritan law? Are they crazy?
Why would we want to help somebody?
I know.
That's what nuns and Red Cross workers are for.
Well, the Samaritans were an ancient tribe. Very helpful to people.
In this clip, we see they get arrested because they were not good Samaritans. They were not helping out. And is this a good law? Well, probably not. You could see a whole lot of things backfiring, but you could see the idea here. You had a community and they thought that a good outcome is anytime somebody's in distress, others should help. That's what they wanted. They wanted when someone's in distress, others help. Now, what kind of rules can they set up? In this case, laws could they set up in order to try to get to this desired outcome? And they created a law which actually imprisons people if they don't help. Of course, that's going to have a whole world of side effects, not to mention if somebody has a gun, you're putting your own life in danger. I wouldn't think this is actually a good law, even if, standing around laughing and pointing and making fun of the person getting robbed is pretty despicable. It's an interesting question, and they were certainly attacking a problem using mechanism design. As I mentioned, if you've been following along with the course, to this point, you've been given a game, and then you've been asked to solve for the equilibrium when we have brought up games to solve. Approaching these issues with, flipping the idea on this, what is a desired outcome, and what can you do to create a mechanism to get to that outcome? Incredibly applicable. It's applicable to law. It's applicable if you're at a workforce and you're designing policies and procedures at a workforce. Quite frankly, it's applicable if you're a parent and you're parenting kids, right? You have a desired outcome. Different parents could have different desired outcomes, right? You want your child to be a good human being when they grow up. You would like them to be productive. You want them to be taxpayers, right? Contribute to society. Like all of the things you may wish for your children as they grow up. And then how do you set up the rules to follow? And that's a tricky one because it's all sorts of years of rules without getting the immediate feedback if you're right, but it is a mechanism design issue. When we create rules that would yield a specific equilibrium, Nash equilibrium, we are engaging in what we call mechanism design. Our games have certain rules to follow, and anybody designing the game would like to ensure you hit that desirable Nash equilibrium. When successful, when a set of rules are put into place and it yields the desired Nash equilibrium, so you get the outcome you want, we have what's called an incentive compatible mechanism. Incentive compatibility, it is discussed a lot within economics. That is the technical phrase for this. An incentive compatible mechanism yields a desired equilibrium. So how does the game theorist, or most people aren't really game theorists, but a person who's attempting to implement a mechanism to get to an equilibrium that they desire, how do you do it? How do we think about mechanism design? The textbook used for the course suggests 4 steps. I think these 4 steps are quite reasonable. Propose a set of rules. Start with an initial set of rules. Look at the rules. Do you get to the Nash equilibrium under the rules? You can assume people are just going to be super nice and all behave and cooperate and do anything that's not in their self-interest. Assume people are behaving in their self-interest. Assume they're behaving non-cooperatively. Okay, under those assumptions, do you get to the Nash equilibrium you're hoping for? If you do, fantastic, but number 3 is if you don't. If the results aren't satisfactory, try to change the rules. Try to set up a different mechanism. Try it again. Once you get to rules that yield the appropriate Nash equilibrium, then you try to adopt them, right? As you are setting things up, you're trying to think through what are all the consequences here. How do you get there? So an example. Okay, exercising caution requires effort. I mean, this might sound silly, but plenty of people will drive and not pay attention when they're driving. Plenty of people will walk on the streets and not pay attention. They'll be checking their cell phones as they're crossing the streets. But this lack of care can cause damage. That can be a problem. However, being careful exerts a cost, which is it's not really a problem, it's just a fact. Being careful, some people, if you don't want to be careful, really, you could put a monetary value on the idea that you've got to be more careful and pay attention. That's the backdrop to think about a game with a motorist and a pedestrian. What happens if there's no liability laws? Okay, with no liability laws in play, let's look at how do we construct the payoff matrix. And to start, we have to make some assumptions. So let's say that if the pedestrian is hit by the car, there's no impact on the motorist. Maybe that's unrealistic, but we'll just go with that assumption. But the pedestrian payoff, it's minus 100, right? Nobody wants to be hit by a vehicle. We'll say there is a minus 10 payoff for either the pedestrian or the motorist for being careful, for exerting effort. If both are careful, generally there won't be an accident, but we say there's a 10% chance of it, right? Tire could blow out, something could happen. But if either of them are not careful, or if both of them are not careful, there will be an accident. So given this information, I think it's useful for you to go ahead and pause the video and attempt to write out the payoff matrix. Okay, here's the payoff matrix. If neither are careful, we know the pedestrian gets hit, but neither pays the penalty of 10 for being careful, so the payoff is minus 100 to the pedestrian. If both are careful, well, they both get the minus 10 penalty from being careful, but there's still a 10% chance of an accident. So taking an expected value, 10% out of the negative 100 is negative 10. So here, I give the pedestrian a payoff of negative 20, the motorist a payoff of negative 10. And if one of them is careful, but the other isn't, the one who's careful pays a penalty of 10. The pedestrian gets hit either way, so pedestrian either gets negative 110 if the pedestrian is careful and still gets hit, or a payoff of negative 100 if they're not careful, they get hit, and then the motorist is careful. Well, looking at this, if there's no liability laws, we've got a big problem, right? This clearly looks like the desired outcome, right? I will say that, this is mechanism design. We want the desirable outcome. We want them both to be careful. But we run into a problem, but the motorist definitely does, right? Because a payoff of negative 10, payoff of 0 if they're not careful. The motorist incurs a cost for being careful. Why would they be careful? The motorist actually has a dominant strategy to show no care. Well, and given that's the case then, given the motorist has a dominant strategy to not be careful, the pedestrian doesn't either, and in equilibrium, the motorist hits the pedestrian. That is not the desired outcome we would be looking for. So, no liability laws, that's a problem. What I would say you could do on your own, naturally, no liability laws is not the way it is. What kind of laws could you set up? A good thing to explore on your own is think through, how could you change the laws and the rules of the game, quote unquote game, I mean this is laws, to create a system where both are careful, and therefore the accident only happens when there's bad luck, right? The 10% chance if they're both careful. There's multiple ways, there's not just one. So that's something I think go ahead and explore on your own. If you want to dive into this a little bit deeper, you could leave a comment if you come up with an idea on that. The idea with mechanism design, it's incredibly powerful. It's messier than a lot of what we cover in game theory because you have to try to determine the rules of the game that can get you to a desired equilibrium. But that's actually what makes it so incredibly useful and so applicable to the real world in many careers and many facets of life. So I hope you enjoyed this video. We will be covering much more on mechanisms and are they incentive compatible or not in the remaining videos of the course. Once again, please like and subscribe, share with a friend if you enjoy this content, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.